Hey guys, it's Jack. I wanted to let you know that we're starting a new push for subscriptions here on Human Events Daily. So make sure that when you're listening to this podcast, you hit subscribe, you download it, and you share it with 5 of your friends. Make sure they're all going and downloading as well, because we need to get the signal out as much as possible. Look, we've done so much over the past couple of years since this show started, and we're only going to do so much more. Let's get it. This is what happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is king.
Dramatic video shows a man running outside this federal building in New York City, then pouring what officials believe to be gasoline and setting the sidewalk on fire. Flames bursting into the air as he runs off. Law enforcement rushing to the scene, a security officer tackling the suspect.
His goal was to target the building. He said that and I'm not going to get into all the details of a post-arrest interview, but he was Mirandized, read his rights. He did agree to talk. In that post-arrest interview, he did say he was targeting the building and he was okay if he hurt or killed people going in and out of the building, whether they were federal employees or civilians.
A report released Monday by the State Department accusing Cuba of a decades-long influence campaign inciting left-wing extremism in the U.S. The document claiming Cuba has infiltrated the highest reaches of the U.S. government, backed an unprecedented wave of left-wing terrorism on American soil, designed to turn America against itself.
Other headlines, there's been a firestorm of criticism after Mayor Mamdani doubled down on his promise to arrest Israel's prime minister when he arrives in New York for the UN General Assembly. Political reporter Marcia Kramer has reaction from the president and also local Jewish leaders.
I believe that when someone is charged with an international criminal court warrant, it's something that should be taken seriously, whether it's Benjamin Netanyahu or it's Vladimir Putin or whomever else. What I've also made clear is that my administration will follow all applicable local laws.
A senior administration official says the United States will put in place a 50% tariff, or tariffs, plural, on 3 sets of Canadian imports. And those categories are cars, dairy, and alcohol.
The battleground state of Arizona is holding its primary elections tomorrow. In the race for governor, 2 congressmen and 2 businessmen are competing for the Republican nomination. Former House Freedom Caucus chair Andy Biggs has the upper hand after winning President Trump's endorsement. The winner of this contest will face off against Democratic incumbent Governor Katie Hobbs in November.
Ann Widdecombe was bludgeoned to death, according to prosecutors, and as a man accused of her murder made his first court appearance.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily, here live, Real America's Voice. Today's July 21st, 2026, Anno Domini. Folks, we just got the new report out of the UK in the Ann Widdecombe murder case. And this one is harrowing. This one is gruesome. So if you're not interested in hearing that kind of stuff, you got little kids, I would say just turn the show off for now. Just turn it off right now. We're going to get into some serious stuff here. Joshua Kerry is an arch leftist. We know that he was found with Nigel Farage and Reform UK clippings up in his home. He's accused of driving 300 miles there and 300 miles back to Ann Widdecombe's home. We're told that Joshua Kerry, 28, allegedly entered her house on July 8th. He walked into her home. 78-year-old woman. She was eating lunch. She was sitting there, wasn't bothering anyone, simply eating lunch with an opinion this guy apparently didn't stand. But what did he do? Well, he had a hammer in his hand. Took that hammer, and he decided that Ann Widdecombe wasn't allowed to have her opinions anymore, and that lunch would actually be her last meal. He took that hammer and he bashed her in the head. Not once, but 21 times, according to the autopsy. 21 times. 21 times. He then stole her wallet and left. He was only in the home for 2 minutes. All this is alleged, again, it's read out in court. 2 minutes. 2 minutes is less time than it takes me to describe his actions to you right now. Walks in, commits the act, walks out, drives another 300 miles. This is horrific. This is an act of pure, unmitigated evil. And I said in the UK, where the death penalty is currently not on the table, that they should bring it back for this guy and maybe a number of other these horrific murders that have gone on British soil in the last couple of years. How can you not put a monster like this to death? If convicted, absolutely, he should be hung from the Tower of London. This is depraved. This is horrific. And ladies and gentlemen, the assassination culture is getting worse. Be right back. Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily.
Stand in our way, and our golden age has just begun.
This is Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
Now it's time for everyone to understand what America First truly means. Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
All right, Jack Posobiec, we're back live here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Folks, America's turning 250, and we are not celebrating weakness. In fact, we're celebrating freedom, strength, and the greatest country in the world. Here's the crazy part. 250 years later, we're still drinking whatever water the government decides to put out in our taps. Well, we're talking about the fluoride that's there in your teeth, the chlorine to keep things clean. Well, that's not a decision I want someone else making for my family, which is why I use Cove Pure to purify the water in the Poso household. Yes, that's right. Over 209 million Americans are on fluoridated water right now. And here's what the science actually shows. A recent study confirmed that fluoride exposure is linked to lower IQ scores in children. Not a fringe study, it's from JAMA Pediatrics, one of the most respected medical journals in the world. Chlorine, that isn't even the worst part. What happens when it reacts with natural particles in the water from plants and soil? It creates chemical byproducts called THMs, which the government itself calls probable human carcinogens, linked to disruption of your gut and cancer. Sure, states are moving on this. Utah and Florida ban fluoride. That process takes years. Your kids, your family, they're drinking this water today. Well, not my family, because we got something that works for us right now, and you can get it too. That's exactly what Cove Pure is. They're certified to remove up to 99.9% of contaminants, fluoride, THMs, pharmaceuticals, PFAs, anything that isn't water gets filtered out. I love how easy Cove Pure is to use, by the way, how great the water tastes, and how much peace of mind it gives me knowing that I'm in control of what the Poso family drinks. So don't wait for the government to catch up. My kids call it super water, by the way, so you can take control of it yourself. And in honor of America's 250th, Cove Pure is giving the Human Events audience $250 off when you use my link, covepure.com/Poso. Don't wait. That's covepure.com/Poso. So, folks, yet again, another example, horrific leftist terrorism, murder, and an assassination. I don't know why you wouldn't call it an assassination. We've got Aaron McIntyre back on, and he and I were talking about this. Now it does appear to be confirmed, Aaron, that that not only was this politically inspired, but just a horrific and brutal act. 21 times this incredible woman who's 78 years old, sitting at home eating lunch. These people will drive into your home, walk in the door, bash you over the head with a hammer while you're eating lunch, and then drive home like nothing happened. Aaron, why is it that that conservatives just don't seem to get what time it is?
Well, as we've talked about in the past, the normalization of leftist political violence is only going to continue unless it's taken seriously. And over again, conservatives have rejected any real efforts to put serious consequences to the wider network of people who are ultimately facilitating these attacks. Now, we don't know ultimately if this was tied to any organization, but what we do know is that organizations like Antifa in the United States do organize these things, do encourage these things. Leftists are doing things like building militias under the guise of things like the John Brown Gun Club. They are trying to coordinate, on servers. And when the leftist media goes out and basically venerates these people, plays up the threats of conservatives as dangerous fascists who are going to annihilate entire groups of people, they're obviously inviting this type of violence, as we saw very sadly with attacks on Donald Trump and the death of Charlie Kirk. The left is more than willing to celebrate this and suggest who should go next. So yes, we might get a few voices saying ultimately, well, maybe we shouldn't go shooting our opponents, but not so secretly, the average leftist is really celebrating these acts of violence, and that only inspires more. I think conservatives are really unnerved at the idea that their neighbor might not ultimately kill them, but would kind of wish them dead if someone else would do the job. That's a terrifying thing to confront, and it's easier to hide your head in the sand.
No, and of course, by the way, it's totally safer, and it's sort of weird how there's this reward structure, incentive structure that's been set up where it's totally safer to say, oh, Mossad did everything, Mossad did this, Mossad did Charlie, Mossad is the reason that the power was out on half of the East Coast last week, and for some reason, it's considered, and I get why people would want to talk about foreign influence, and obviously we should. In fact, I want to ask you about that in a minute. But it's almost like they'll go straight to that rather than actually discuss what's happening in the world. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we shouldn't downplay the danger of foreign influence. I think you and I both feel that is, very degrading to our republic and needs to be stopped. But yeah, you're absolutely correct that there are so many people who are willing to rush to this explanation at every moment because it avoids them having to deal with the real world. Look, again, you can have your own criticisms of the state of Israel, but at the end of the day, they're not going to kill you over it. You're not actually going to be killed by the Mossad for criticizing Israel. However, a leftist will kill you for criticizing them. We know that leftists will react with violence whenever they are challenged. So it's far safer to put the blame on some, faraway government that's never really going to take you seriously and try to hurt you, as opposed to the left, where these crazed lunatics will actually go after not just big officials, but average people in order to stop them from criticizing the leftist agenda. So I think ultimately it is simply safer to make those kind of conspiracy theories and ultimately put the blame there rather than to face the fact that if you criticize the left, they will come for you violently.
Yes, that's right. And in fact, we are seeing the State Department now. I mean, they have this big Cuba report that's out that's very interesting and shows that a lot of these organized groups, the National Lawyers Guild, among others, who directly work with Antifa, have been receiving some of this foreign influence. And in terms of organization, occasionally in terms of payments. My question is, are we going to get any arrests? Are we going to actually see people prosecuted? Are we going to see these groups actually disrupted and broken up? Because we know the government has done this. Government did this in the past, by the way, to the very same type of subversive groups in the wake of the assassination of President William McKinley, for example, Teddy Roosevelt oversaw an entire national campaign on this. This is really simple stuff that our government has done in the past, and yet we don't see it happening now.
Well, we've seen some encouraging action from the Trump administration. They did declare Antifa a foreign terror network, which opens up a lot of opportunities for them to look at their finances, to bring charges, to use powers that they otherwise would not be able. We've also heard from the Trump administration, specifically Marco Rubio, that Cuba has been a key funnel for bringing a lot of funding and influence into leftist terror in the country, that the communists there have been funneling support and money and these kind of things, structure to these groups. That's good. If that's true, then pursuing these connections is critical. But it has been, frankly, a long time since the attempts on President Trump's life and the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And it's time to see some action. I understand and I respect that ultimately the Trump administration wants to get this right. You don't want to mess this up. It's too important. It's, Charlie's family and friends deserve a careful execution of these kinds of prosecutions to ensure we roll up everybody, we get the funding, we get the organizations, we get the groups. That's critical. You don't want to go too fast and make any mistakes, but eventually we need to see the action taken. And we're getting to the point where it's concerning, as careful as one might want to be about these prosecutions and structuring these cases and going after people, at some point people start to believe just nothing is happening. And so I think it would be nice if we continued to receive clear messaging from the administration as where they are in this process, because without the messaging and without the action, it does give aid to the leftists who think that ultimately they are getting away with this stuff because the hammer never really drops.
Right, and it's really this idea that you can't operate with such levels of impunity if you're going to do this. And to be clear, we know what the federal government looks like when they want to go after groups of people. Okay, we saw the response to COVID. We saw the response to January 6th. I'm not even talking about anything to that level, which in both cases I say was completely unjust. But I'm just saying that when we've lived through things like this in recent history, within the last 5 years, we don't need to wind back the clock to say, oh, this was 120 years ago, like I did with McKinley and Teddy Roosevelt. No, I'm talking about stuff that happened very recently that we know the government is able to do. And you're right. It's been two years since Butler, and then but the Kennedy, not the Kennedy Center attack, which was it? The White House Correspondents' Dinner attack was not that long ago. That was a shooting. People were shot at. If Wolf Blitzer or my friend Sam Nunberg had been standing a little bit to the right or a little bit more beyond the the bathroom of the Washington Hilton, they would have been hit. I had friends that were at that. Erica Kirk was literally at that dinner. I had many other friends that were at that dinner. So the idea that we're going to sit back and just sort of like wait for these things to continue to happen, it really does seem like it's a bit too passive, and it just calls for a certain level of urgency that we're not quite seeing yet. And unfortunately, the grim reality is this: that if we don't start taking this seriously, there are going to be more Ann Widdecombe's, there are going to be more Charlie Kirks, there will be more assassination attempts on President Trump, on J.D. Vance, other members of the cabinet. Supreme Court justices are wearing bulletproof vests. People have been waiting outside their homes. People have been swatting them. The Secretary of the Treasury had a transgender who was about to kill him at one point. It's all real. It's all real, folks, and it will not stop until it is stopped. Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. We'll be right back.
Talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, who's done a great job.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec, we're back live here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. And I want to get folks' understanding that we're in a world where so much is changing. Things that matter the most never do. They never change. Faith, family, freedom, and the values we choose to stand for. Even something as ordinary as your phone service can reflect those values, and that's what Patriot Mobile is all about. For more than 12 years, they've served Americans who want their money to support the causes they believe in, backing the Christian conservative movement and organizations that fight for faith, family, and freedom. Switching is easy. You can keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade to a new device. Their 100% US-based customer support team can have you up and running in minutes. And if you're still paying off your current phone, they can even help with a contract buyout. Best of all, Patriot Mobile offers premium priority access on all 3 major US networks, so you don't have to sacrifice reliable service to make a values-based choice. If you believe it matters who you trust with your communication, where your money goes, Patriot Mobile is worth a look. Go to patriotmobile.com/POSO, call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code POSO to get a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/POSO or call 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. So, Aaron McIntyre, you just did a whole episode about this topic that is really exploding all over the place. The head of product over at Twitter just tweeted out not too long ago that, in fact, they are now investigating. So Twitter has now opened up an investigation into undisclosed foreign influence campaigns which are running on the product, on X. And I think that's phenomenal. I think that's absolutely something that they need to get into. And in fact, something that I think a lot of people have overlooked is that this is one of Charlie Kirk's last pushes, because he had a tweet up on September 4th, 2025. So, just a few days before he was murdered, where he was sort of quote tweeting something that Nick Sorter was putting out about tariffs on India and people who were attacking tariffs on India. And Charlie commented, "You have to wonder if this coordinated activity promoting the interests of India should trigger FARA registrations. Many accounts are obviously being paid to peddle this trash from the Indian government. Who is paying them and how much? We need answers." It's one of the last things that Charlie Kirk ever tweeted. And I think Charlie's right. And I think that it shouldn't just be India. It should be Israel. It should be Qatar. It should be China. It should be literally anyone who is a foreign nation or any individual that's being paid for it. So, Aaron, talk to me a little bit about some of the work that you're doing now, kind of exposing this foreign influence, not just on X, but really everywhere in our politics.
Well, I had Alex Bruzewitz on, who is the Trump social media strategist, and he recounted his experience of basically being approached by a cutout for the Israeli government about receiving millions of dollars so that he could give a pro-Israel messaging strategy on social media around the Iran war. And when he turned that offer down, it would appear that they moved on to another conservative operator who used to be associated with the Trump campaign. And it seems like a lot of money exchanged hands. And ultimately, we saw a rise in the number of commentators who were messaging on this issue. Now, I don't think this is entirely artificial. I think there are probably a lot of people who were interested in discussing it, but it's very clear that much of it was promoted and subsidized. And, it's obviously, as you point out, not just Israel. India, China, Qatar, Russia, they're all spending a lot of money and a lot of time trying to influence American social media, especially in the conservative sphere. And one of the reasons is that with the collapse of trust in mainstream media, a lot of people see things like conservative Twitter or other social media spheres as more organic. It's something that has a normal energy. It seems like average people talking. It doesn't have this slick produced style. And so people tend to think that the messages are more genuine. But as we're uncovering with all these foreign influence operations, in many cases, people are encouraged to discuss this. Now, again, not every one of these people is getting a script directly from a foreign government. Many of them probably already support good relationships with those governments anyway. But when you add additional money to their pockets for talking about the issue, you incentivize a harder line approach, a more constant messaging stream. And that's why we're seeing these different foreign influence ops kind of shift through the social media environment. So I think it's really important that across the board, no matter what the country is, we reject this foreign influence. We say this is deleterious to the Republic, to the United States. And ultimately, we need to have disclosure. I agree 100% with Alex. What he said on my show, we need to see hard investigations into this, probably extensions of FARA laws or strengthening of these kind of policies so that we know when people are being paid for these opinions.
Yeah, and it's it's interesting because like I used to have this series and I still kind of do it every once in a while, like meanwhile in Poland, like there'd be some horrific act of violence or terrorism in the United States, and I would just respond with like a picture of Poland and say, meanwhile in Poland, there's like children playing in the city square or something. And obviously I was doing so to make a point about immigration and make a point about, sort of the broader world that we could have. But it would never even occur to me to accept money on behalf of a foreign government, even if I agree with a variety of things, maybe not the current Polish government, but at least the conservatives in Poland do. But I would never take money for something like that, like or Japan. Like you could point to lots of positive things about Japanese culture without being paid by them. But you're exactly right that if I were doing so, then of course I would want to be tweeting about them more. I would probably have metrics that I would need to hit. I would probably have someone looking over my shoulder. Hey, did you make sure that you tweeted about Paraguay 100 times today? Did you tweet about Israel 100 times? Did you call out, certain individuals 100 times a day? This is a huge problem, and it's absolutely going to fray our politics, and we can't have it happen. It's really as simple as that. So, Aaron, I want to say thank you for your work on it. And we're going to do what we can here at Human Events Daily to start calling it out as well. And part of that, of course, is picking up what Charlie left for us. A mission. I would say this is a mission that Charlie left for us. One of the last ones that he did to root this out specifically on social media. Oren McIntyre, where can people follow you?
Oren McIntyre Show is on YouTube. It's on Blaze TV. And of course, I'm Oren McIntyre on X.
All right, folks. Jack Posobiec, Real America's Voice. We'll be right back with more.
Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, folks. Jack Posobiec back live here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. I want to keep riding this topic of the foreign influence campaigns on X, and Nikita Bear over on X, the head of product, says that it is now going to be investigated. I want to get Rich Barris on here, the People's Pundit, because Rich has talked about this quite a bit. Rich, how are you?
Living the dream, brother. Thanks for having me, as always.
Yeah, of course. And by the way, congrats on having President Trump tweet out your poll there on the popularity of the peace deal that was, at least the popularity of the Iran ceasefire deal.
Yeah, and thanks. And, I'm hoping that that's a signal change, Jack. We'll see.
It may be, because I saw the White House actually. It wasn't just one of those ones where like the president just tweets out something and then like everybody drops it. Because then I saw the White House actually went and they made a graph based on it, and they tweeted that as well, backing it up. So, perhaps that was a signal. Who knows? Big data poll may be playing a role in the negotiations between the United States and Iran. Can you believe it?
I mean, once upon a time, never, but here we are, and God be praised.
Here we are. That's what it's all about, brother.
Glory to the Lord.
But look,
brother.
what we're talking about, we're talking about influence campaigns. Perhaps that was one the president and the White House are using on the Iranians, which is totally fair game. Of course, it's literally his job. But one of the things that Charlie Kirk tweeted, one of the last things that he tweeted, one of the last missions that I think he left for us is to get foreign influence campaigns off of X. This was one of the final things that Charlie ever tweeted. He did so on September 4th, 2025, just 6 days before his murder. And Rich, I know you've seen this. I know you've talked about this. When you see these influence campaigns come up on X, when you see the influence of this, people have to understand it has no impact whatsoever on the electorate, does it?
It really doesn't. And I wish that lawmakers and elected officials would understand that more. Reality impacts what the electorate thinks and how they're going to vote and what they're going to do and the views they're going to hold. I actually remember that tweet from Charlie. And if putting it in context, if you guys remember, the president was engaged in, basically using tariffs as a trade negotiation strategy, which is widely supported in the Rust Belt, despite what you see from some other legacy and media pollsters. That was widely popular in the Rust Belt. And I've tried to carry that torch. At that time it was India. Of course, we talk a lot about Israel now. If you bring up Israel's $750 million Hasbara campaign, which includes that, Time Magazine had an article. People go nuts, but my message is very clear, Jack. FARA should extend to social media, and we shouldn't pick and choose like some of the others. Like I'm not even going to say their names. They've come after you before. They pick on Qatar or they pick on India, they pick on and then of course you have some who pick on Israel with it. My message has been clear that this should be a blanket application. Some lawyers already argue that that's what the law does, but I think it's obvious, Jack, because we see it every day on this site. And I'm so glad to see X take this up because this is becoming a burden on their product. I was looking at Mike Cernovich. He tweeted earlier this morning. Well, this morning for me, Mike. It's, probably not even the sun up by him when he tweeted that at that point. But he said, I block people for X number of reasons. And for all of the time I've been on X, I don't like blocking. And the reason was simple. I felt like it. I'm with Charlie on this. I don't want to stymie debate at all. And I thought it was counterproductive. But I said this morning, I may have to rethink it. Mike may be right because the site itself is getting so polluted by foreign money. They're not, earnest actors. These are bad faith actors and they're paid to do it. So some people are just not even worth engaging with anymore. And I don't want to see that, Jack. Do you? No way.
No,
we want this site to
none
be
of us
free.
do.
Yeah.
No,
exactly
and of
right.
course, we also don't want, we want it to be a site for discourse, and we want it to be a site where we can actually get kind of that pulse of the people. And when you're dealing with bots or you're dealing with people, and especially influencers, by the way, who should know better? Influencers who
Right.
have audiences that they built ostensibly by being, MAGA supporters or at least, public MAGA supporters, regardless of what they may believe in their their private lives. But that's kind of the point, right? Because you don't want, and by the way, some of these have been very just obnoxious, like this one here about the one that Charlie was talking about, where people were like, tariffs are good and all, but and I support Trump, but I don't think we should have tariffs on India at all. Like, it's like wait, what are you talking about? I think there was one that was going around that was also India that I remember that was like very, very obvious, where they were talking about Indian motorcycles or something. Do you remember this one? Where it was like,
Oh, yes.
gosh, I used to think that Harley Davidson was the best, but now I
It's
can't
so
leave home
obvious.
without my Indian motorcycle.
It's so obvious, Jack. For those of us who have been on this site for, more than
It's like that
almost
Wayne's
2
World
decades.
sketch where he's just like eating the Doritos, like out of
Yeah.
putting the bag right in front of the camera.
Exactly. It's right in your face. So there's really, there's no debating. But unfortunately, there are still those like users out there anyway, like there's social media site users that may not know what they're looking at. They may not. So it's just prudent and best if we know that somebody has filed, with FARA and something on X and their posts, kind of like the paid partnership, that idea, something has to have a FARA, not violation, but a FARA disclaimer. Even the paid partnership idea was good, doesn't go far enough when it comes to Foreign Agents Registration Act. I mean, it's very important for Americans, and we shouldn't be alone, by the way. Other countries, their citizens should know whether there's a foreign power, paying one of their favorite influencers to write garbage on the website all day. And people should know that. That should be disclaimed, Jack. Come on. This should be a no-brainer. I mean, sometimes it's obvious to you and I, but it's not always obvious to everybody. And, I've been calling for this for the better part, more than a year now, for probably a few months. Every single day I would tweet out, here's the daily reminder that we need to make sure FARA extends to this site. It just got so gross and so in your face after a while. Dorito bag right in your face.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous, and especially when we're in a situation where we do have Iran going on. It's kicked off again. I understand there's a mediator, and it's like one of those it's like one of those on again, off again relationships. I think, the war's on again, the war's off again, the war's on again, the war's off again. And, you're trying to figure out exactly where we're at. But 10 nights of no strikes. At the end of the day, I have to think that Rich, and you're probably the same way, this really comes down to the thesis of your new book, Burn It Down, because people aren't actually following the day-to-day of this. They just want to hear, are you fighting for me or are you fighting for something overseas? And that's kind of their lens through looking at any of this. They're not asking, is it good for American interests? Is it bad? People don't even go that far.
In the book, too, and I appreciate you bringing this up. In the book, we go into a lot of detail about generational differences and how quickly that will have a very big impact on the electorate and how much harder it will be for one party or the other to win elections if they don't position themselves correctly. But and often, a lot of times, the boomers get picked on for this, right? But the truth is, it's not even this war posture, this hawkish war posture that so many are trying to return to, isn't really even popular among them anymore. I mean, we can call it affectionately the Fox Boomer Con. They're a minority even of boomers, right? So the data, even them in their day-to-day lives, they're not looking at, how many strikes and I want to watch the war on TV. Like, that is a bygone era. People just want to know that the government cares about them and is paying attention to their problems. I can't pay my rent. Things are real tight this month. When I turn on the TV, does it look like my elected officials care about whether or not I can put something in my refrigerator, or care about whether or not I can make my car lease payment or my car payment or whatever it may be, pay my mortgage? We're going to have school come around soon. It's going to be back to school soon, Jack. Well, when I turn on the television, does Ted Cruz look like he cares at all about whether I can go get new wardrobes for my children come the fall to make sure they don't go to school wearing, hand-me-down kicks? This is all they want. This is not hard. And unfortunately, and this is both parties, it's not just one, it is in both, but there's a governing and ruling party right now. So, I mean, that unfortunately people hold them accountable for things. When they turn on that TV now, and have you ever heard Ted Cruz say anything about any of those things I just mentioned? Unfortunately not. That's
what we need to focus on, folks. We'll be right back. Rich Barris, Human Events Daily.
Sobic Appreciation Hour. I can say confidently, I think Josh Shapiro would be the vice presidential nominee if it wasn't for Jack Posobiec. And that is, I'm being honest.
Right now, as I'm speaking, there are thugs, there are gang members, there are rapists, and there are bad hombres here in this city that Katie Hobbs is protecting. And they're coming in your neighborhoods. They're coming to Glendale. They're coming to Mesa. They're coming to Chandler. They're coming to Gilbert. I am not fear-mongering. You all know a story of a home invasion, a break-in, a young girl on a college campus, and it is preventable. But Katie Hobbs flirted with the idea of making the state a sanctuary state. Day one, when Andy Biggs says, "So help me God," Andy Biggs will pick up the phone and say, "Mr. President, how can I help get every illegal out of the state of Arizona. Day one. Imagine the potential of this state if we had a governor that was willing to work with the President of the United States.
Biggs Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. Biggs Tuesday is upon us in the great state of Arizona. State 48. If you are in Arizona, if you know someone in Arizona, either go out and vote or make sure and text them. Text every single contact in your phone if they have voted for Arizona. Rich Barris, I want to get you in here. Talk about the importance of these primary races in Arizona, especially the Andy Biggs race.
I mean, Arizona is so critical. I'm so glad to talk about this right now. Number one, Jack, while there's a lot of people who are just talking about influence campaigns on X, while all of that is going on, there's also a lot of people who are doing real work, that hard work, which isn't sexy, and that's what it takes to win elections. And this is Turning Point's home base. You have Tyler and the guys and girls at Chase the Vote doing this hard work that rarely gets any credit or rarely gets any attention. But you can clearly see from just the primary turnout data so far that Arizona is voting completely against the Republican trend this year, which is a testament to the work that Charlie and all the people at Turning Point put into motion years ago. It takes time for this to you to see the fruits of their labor. Arizona is critical, and especially the governor's race. Andy Biggs, he's going to be nominated tonight. But it's critical for a couple of reasons. Number one, folks, this was Charlie's home state. This is Turning Point's home base. You can't give Democrats an inch in this state. They have to be booted out of this state and build a wall around Arizona like this is our Sun Belt firewall. You can't come in. I mean, you shall not pass, right? It has to be like that. You have to send a statement, and I think there's going to be the start of that now. Again, Republicans have not been doing well in turnout, in specials, in the off cycles, and even in the primaries. And primary vote is predictive. But Republicans are doing very well in turnout. And of course, we know they show up on election day. Still, they favor that, even in a heavily mail-in balloting state like Arizona. So I think we're going to see them expand their advantage tonight, right? And Biggs is running against Schweikert. He's a representative from the 1st Congressional District. I think Biggs is going to take it tonight. I think he's got about more than a 95% chance to do so. And Schweikert's district, House 1, will be a battleground in the fall. And right now the favorite is Feely. Again, this is why tonight is so important. Republicans, if you haven't, you still have time. Obviously, go and vote. You have to send a message in Arizona. I don't want to say this like I'm not being, I'm not being coy here, Jack, but Republicans, you have to do this for Charlie. You have to put up a big number tonight, and I think you're going to. But you cannot do what Texas did. You cannot do what North Carolina did. This is Arizona. You got to show up. You got to turn up. You got to turn up and turn out. It's time. This is game.
No, this is absolutely key, and this is something that Charlie was laser focused on was prevent. I love that idea, building the red wall around Arizona. And yes, it was so jarring for me, by the way, to hear someone refer to, I forget what I was listening to earlier, but hear that, hey, Arizona is a purple state. Arizona is a purple state. I mean, Rich, when you see a win like Donald J. Trump had in 2024, and much of that, of course, was thanks to Charlie and Turning Point USA. But when you see a win like that, does that really seem like a purple state to you?
No, I mean, 6 point plus. Remember the polls, showed that one of them, a very well-known poll in a corporate media outlet that purports to be right-wing, actually had Harris winning that state. And then Trump romped her. He also beat her in Nevada, but this is important because even going back, and some of you guys out there may remember, I mean, Katie Hobbs is illegitimate. I don't know how to say this. She's got to be beaten in the fall. She's illegitimate. She really shouldn't be there. I testified. I believe that so strongly that I testified in court on behalf of Kerry Lake's team because I do believe that. She's got to go. She's got to be booted out. So you send a message. You can't come back again. It's not a purple state. And that's the only reason why I do think Ruben Gallego, by the way, was able to, kind of win some of those Trump crossover voters because of the incorrect narrative that followed Kerry as she pursued the Senate race. And it's all in state-to-state migration matters, folks. That's what turned Florida so red. We did start to see that in North Carolina, although that trend has been arrested. But all of the people fleeing from the Central Valley and from Southern California that no longer want to live in a deep blue state. Arizona is one of the #1 destination spots for those movers. The demographic trends have been in your favor despite the increase in the Hispanic vote. And by the way, that's why it's so key. Charlie understood this. Trump's appeal with working class Hispanics, especially those who identify as independents, who are moderate, he won big with these men, specifically younger men. And that's something that Republicans should have been focused on like a laser, that we also have to make sure that those men come out for us too. Arizona should not be a purple state. I mean, there's at this point, since the era of immigration has somewhat subsided, Jack, they should be taking advantage solely of that state-to-state migration, should be winning over those Trump voters, and we should be seeing R plus 6 to 15 victories again in that state. There's really no reason for it.
No, there isn't, and that's exactly why this is going to be key. Now, obviously, there's going to be some congressional primaries. Any of those that you're looking at in Arizona tonight?
Arizona 1 is going to be tough. Feely is definitely going to be the more viable candidate to be able to take on the Democrat. And look, fundraising matters, guys. I wish it didn't, but sometimes I like certain candidates better than others based on just their positions and their rhetoric and what I perceive to be a backbone or not. But fundraising does matter. That race is going to have a lot of money dumped into it. David Schweikert held on by the skin of his nose in several races now. And you have to see Republicans hold on to that if you don't want to see a bloodbath in the House. So I'm going to be looking at Arizona 1. Outside of that, I mean, that will be the most competitive. Siscomani, all those others. Eli, he should be okay unless it's a total wipeout in November. But the first congressional district is definitely the one I'm eyeing outside of the governor's race. And by the way, speaking of the governor, it's not just that Biggs, he's proven, he's tested, Jack. You know what I mean? David Schweikert was in the House. We all have records. We all have vote records. Not picking one over the other. I'm just simply saying that Biggs is definitely more MAGA. And after Katie Hobbs, you're going to need MAGA.
I'm just saying that, when it comes down to it, the House races, congressional races are very tough. They're very tricky also to understand. One of my favorite anecdotes is that Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama all ran for Congress and lost before going on to become president. So it just goes to show you that, to your point about the candidate, about the district, about the timing, all of the fundraising, all of those things need to be aligned or you're not going to win one of these races.
Especially in a district like this. Even after the redistricting war, Jack, I mean, Republicans did very well. I think they did better than even a lot of us expected. But, in an environment which is essentially a second-term incumbent midterm, it's tough. And you really have to put your best foot forward. It's definitely not impossible, which is why, I sit on these shows and do this every day in the hopes that you give people advice that they take and they run with, because it'll make their life easier. It'll make their November easier and their Wednesday morning, at the very least, less painful. And when it comes to congressional races, all the stars have to align. They really do. And they have to be viable candidates. They have to be ready for prime time. And unfortunately, part of that viability is whether you can raise money.
Rich Barris, where can people go to follow you?
Jack, we're everywhere. Coming in on the gram at peoples_pundit. Same thing on X, but the best place is peoplespundit.locals.com. And go pre-order Burn It Down on Amazon.
Coming in hot on the gram, folks. Give them a follow. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.